Rena, I think a lot of Republicans wish that Donald Trump had given that speech a week ago. It feels kind of a day late and a dollar short. There's kind of frustration on the congressional side that Trump wasn't out there making the case for the bill the way he did just now. This is the first time we've heard the president really lay out the case for this bill. He's sort of taken a very passive approach. He called the House bill mean, said it needed to be nicer. And we could dissect the policy of this speech in detail because he made some firm claims with some real numbers. And I think the fact checkers will say that people's premiums aren't going to go down 60 to 70% under this bill. The Congressional Budget Office scored the previous version and found that 22 million fewer people would have health care a decade from now than have it now if the bill passed. But that's a substantive public policy debate that experts can have. But this is the first time we're hearing Trump make those kinds of claims and lay out these kinds of numbers about the benefits the legislation would have. At this point, a bunch of Republicans are on the record as being against the bill. So there would need to be pretty significant changes. And the problem for Republicans, Rena, is that you have some Tea Party type conservatives who say the bill doesn't go far enough. And you have some moderates who say the bill goes too far. So it's not just one sort of tweak you could make to the measure to get 50 Republican senators on board. And that hasn't changed even with Donald Trump having everyone over to the White House for lunch.
For so many Americans, this is a life or death issue, James, when it comes to health care. I mean, these are real people's lives at stake. How certain do you think that these Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill will work through recess and actually try and accomplish something in a bipartisan manner?
The sad truth, and thank you for saying that, because it's so important in this conversation. We often lose sight of that. And the unfortunate reality is that I don't think they're going to stay and work on it through August recess. I don't think that there's actually a real appetite on either side to make compromises across the aisle. They're going to have a show vote early next week. This isn't the end of the story. And they'll vote on the motion to proceed to debate. It's sort of a procedural thing. And based on what everyone is saying publicly, there will not be the votes to advance it. And at that point, I guess they could have some hearings, but that won't make much of a difference. And it's not clear what Democrats and Republicans could agree on, certainly if Republicans couldn't agree among themselves. And I think that will be it for at least a little while. Healthcare is 1/6 of our economy, so the issue is not going to go away. It's going to continue to nag at these senators as they go home to their states for August recess, and hospital executives and patients come up to senators and complain to them for not taking action. But it's very, very hard to see anything happening in the next couple weeks.
We saw those town halls and just how heated those got during recess. So I'm guessing we're going to see more of those. I want to ask you also, James, switching gears a little bit, a lot of buzz out of Washington about the White House under fire after it revealed that President Trump had a second meeting that was previously undisclosed with President Putin at the G20 summit. Is this Washington making a big deal out of this? How important is this? People are saying they obviously should have mentioned this. So what's the controversy here? Can you break this down for us?
Yeah, you've got to look at this in context. This matters because the president is obviously, his whole campaign is under investigation for potential coordination or even collusion with the Russians. His son met with the Russians to try and get information from the government about Hillary Clinton. And it was very controversial for him to meet with Vladimir Putin in the first place. And the fact that the White House didn't disclose it makes it a little bit suspicious. And what worries national security professionals is that there was no U.S. translator, there was no U.S. note taker. So there's no real information about what Trump may have promised Putin or what assurances Trump may have given the Russians. Vladimir Putin is very, very good at this game. He's played it for a long time. And there is a lot of concern that Trump, who's new to geopolitics, could get played by the Russian leader or agree to things that he shouldn't agree to without counsel and advice from his top diplomats and national security advisors. So there's a lot of concern inside the national security apparatus about just the fact that Trump was there with no other American. The translator was a Russian. And so there's worry about what was said. The only knowledge the U.S. has of this meeting is what Trump claimed was said, but we don't actually know.
Is there any sense of regret coming from the White House that they didn't disclose this?
None at all. They're completely defiant. Trump fired off 2 tweets overnight saying this was no big deal. This was it. This previously scheduled dinner. The sources say that it was a 1-hour meeting. The White House disputes that, says it took less time, but they haven't given us any readout of what was actually talked about for an hour. That's a very, very long time to talk to someone. And we don't know what was said.
Yeah, it is a very long time. Meanwhile, Senator Feinstein says that Special Counsel Robert Mueller has actually cleared the way for Donald Trump Jr. and Paul Manafort to testify. What do you anticipate that lawmakers want to know about that meeting that happened in June 2016?
A lot of things. Donald Trump Jr. hasn't said anything under oath, and when he's in a position where he might perjure himself if he didn't tell the truth, maybe that will cause him to change his story again. We have heard from some people who were in the meeting that Donald Jr. was handed a folder with information, and we want to know, I think senators want to know what's in that folder. What information did the Russians provide, and did any other conversations come from this meeting? Right now we know about the meeting, and it's very possible there were other conversations, other contacts, other meetings, other back channels with the Russians during the campaign. And if there was any connection between what Donald Trump tweeted that afternoon of the meeting about how there were some bombshells about Hillary Clinton that were coming soon, and the fact that the emails were then hacked soon after the meeting, if there's any connection between any of these conversations. I think that's what senators are going to try to get at. And we'll see how forthcoming Don Jr. is.
And James, if you had one question that Donald Trump Jr. would take from you, what would you ask him about this?
If I could put Donald Trump Jr. on truth serum, I would ask, fully outline all contacts that you know about between anyone connected to your father and anyone connected to the Russian government or any Russian nationals. He said that he's been fully forthcoming and there's no more to it, but then we found out late last week that there were several more people in the meeting that he didn't previously acknowledge.
James Hohmann with Washington Post. Thank you for joining us, James.
My pleasure. Thank you.